Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, March 26th, 2020.
I'm Anthony Majoni from Stone Rise Philly Magazine.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. We'll just say hi to Eck, but I'll intro Kevin. Kevin's the owner, proprietor of In Goal Magazine. He was my previous editor because I think I wrote there for about maybe a year. And he really taught me a lot about goaltending because I remember the first article I went to write, he really got into specifics that I didn't even know existed. And that was really good. And now, of course, they're staples in the game. So, Kevin, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I've never done this format, so I apologize to everyone if I screw up some of the tech components, like starting by being late by not having it all sorted out. But thanks for having me, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
It's all right.
You beat me. You beat me. So
you did. You beat the host. So
I know. Welcome to the show. I appreciate it. My whole computer was like restarting in weird mode. So, but thank you so much for joining us. It's a real honor to have you guys here today.
That's my pleasure.
We'll go with basics. And Kev, you got started in this a while ago. I don't even know how long ago it was I was writing for you, but you always seem to be ahead of the curve as far as head tracking, as far as a lot of different things in the position that probably really didn't exist in the 80s and maybe even into the 90s. So give us an idea of what's really changed in the last decade in the position.
Oh, I mean, I think this is what I've come to love about the position is it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing, and to quote a guy who's become a good friend and mentor, as I've learned about the position, Roberto Luongo, like if you're not always looking to get better, you're falling behind. And I think that's what has defined guys like him and their ability to have consistency throughout their careers is that they never lean too hard on one thing and were resistant to change. They may not have adopted every new thing. I guess the biggest example for me would be post play and the way that goalies integrate into their posts. And I think probably in the non-goalie world, people hear us talking about things like VH and reverse VH and post integration and overlap, and they're like, come on, it's a post play. And a lot of people who don't understand, there's even some former goalies that'll be like, just stand up on the post. And the reality is that's such an integral part of the position, especially as teams attack from sharp angles and try to exploit goaltenders from behind the net, which is one of the toughest spots for a goaltender because you have to turn your head to follow that play, and you lose the ability to see what's going on in front of your net when you do so. And also, if it goes behind the net, you have to choose when you turn your vision from one side to the other, because that obviously, anytime I make that decision, I've made a choice to give up my vision on the puck.
Right.
Things like that are just constantly evolving because they're so important to the position. And not every tool is going to fit every goaltender. Not every goaltender is going to want to put every new tool in their toolbox. But to me, the ones that succeed are the ones that are willing to try new and different things to see how and if they can work them into their game, and then they go to work getting comfortable with them. That's the thing. Sometimes it's hard to make these changes in season because there's so many practices. How do I get comfortable repping these things out? I remember Connor Hellebuck early with the Jets. Didn't even really have reverse VH in his game and added it, but in the process of adding it, he repped it out so much in practice that one year that it almost can become like a default. Hey, I've done this 300 times in practice yesterday. Now suddenly the puck's down there and I just go into it. Sometimes maybe even not in the right situation. So those are all the sort of constant variables, in just one example of post play that are involved in the position. And what I love about it is there's no absolute answer. There's no one right way to do it. There are very few, if any, absolutes in goaltending, which means there's always new ideas, new concepts. There's always from one team, one coach, one goalie to the next, a different way to approach the same situation. And sometimes we see one that's better than another. It'll measure out statistically over time. But for the most part, there's no one answer. And that's what makes it fascinating.
What I kind of love about that is, and I'm such a fan of your stuff. I'm a goalie myself, and I grew up being trained as a goalie in the 80s, which is like a completely different world from now, right? So, and the stuff you're saying, what must be interesting when working with goalies is that I've noticed there's more and more of these kind of things you're talking about of technical, newer ways of looking at things, and yet you have really personality-wise superstitious guys who are because of what they know and I know some of them, I've talked to guys that are afraid to learn something new because they think they'll screw something up. I mean, that must be a big issue in this whole thing.
Well, I mean, maybe that's why some of the younger goalies, obviously Carter Hart in Philadelphia, Russ, obviously be intimately familiar with in terms of his game. Like there's a guy who I think it's unfair to say it's increasingly the young guys that are maybe a no stone unturned approach. When I just gave the example of Roberto, who would try anything. And the other part is there's a danger, guys, in going too far the other way. And it's one thing to want to try new things, but you can sometimes be obsessed with chasing the next big thing. I've talked to a lot of goalies over the years. I remember Mike Condon talking about how, he would literally see new things on Instagram. There's, obviously a huge amount of Instagram goalie instruction and stuff like that. And he'd want to try it and try the latest fad. And this is a guy who's a pro goalie. And sometimes the hardest thing within a season, if you're struggling, you can go through like a 10 or 15 game dip. And really, when you break down the goals, a good goalie coach is going to ask you, would you have done anything different? And quite often the answer is no. The puck's a weird shape. It's frozen. It's ice. It bounces off bodies. Like it's a crazy, unpredictable game. You can have a dip statistically where you really don't need to change your game. And having a coach that can help you understand that I'm still doing everything right can be the most important thing of coming out of that rather than trying to chase change. So it's, that I know goalies that I've made mistakes. Actually, frankly, one of my bigger ones here in Vancouver as an analyst was getting to know Eddie Lack, seeing the success he had. And I think the last year in Vancouver, a lot of people forget, he's the last goalie to lead the Canucks to the playoffs. He had a 922 at the time. Yeah, he did so much good in that last playoff to get them in during that run. And I knew that there were elements in his game that were just still remarkably inefficient. Right. I knew that he wanted to fix them. And so I looked at what he accomplished and saw the desire to make some changes and frankly was part of facilitating his introduction to some of the coaches that would help with those changes. I watched him in the summers and I watched these efficiencies improve to the point where I had other NHL goalies watching him on the ice in the offseason say, can't believe that's the same guy. Yeah. Like he looked that much better. And yet the success never followed. Seeing all that, I was certain he would be a number one goaltender. Now, there were some physical issues. There were some coaches that pulled him in different directions. There were a lot of different factors at play, but sometimes chasing the latest and there's an element of unpredictability to maybe some of the inefficiencies in his game. Shooters, didn't feed into. Maybe he became too predictable. There's just so many factors, and I'm learning as I go that there's an example where I was pretty confident in statements I made at the time, and I was wrong.
It's crazy, and whether wrong or right, it's hard to say you're wrong. It's one of these things that there is no position in sports at all that has such an introverted feel to it, such a alone with your thoughts feel to it as goalie. So you spend so much time with yourself. You do feel separate. You feel isolated from your teammates quite often, just in general, teammates, they are all on the bench. They get to talk to each other as the game's going on. They get to see this is what's happening. And you're sitting there by yourself and that's a real, stuff like that, you can be technically great and still mentally lost. How much of mental, I know some goalies who've done hypnosis and all kinds of things to try to get themselves mentally straightened out. How much of that, is there something new in that, Kevin? Like, is there some new way of getting there for people?
I think there's much like the technical side of the position, it's always evolving. Right? Yeah. And so we've seen strength training evolve for goaltenders over the years as well, become much more position specific. It wasn't that long ago that I would talk to goalies who had to meet certain bench press requirements at the end of every summer when they went back to training camp, as if a bench press had anything to do with stopping pucks. So it's a relatively new, both on the physical side, you have specialized trainers like Maria Mountain, Adam Francilia, who works with I want to say he's 8, 9, 10 NHL goalies in the offseason now, including the physical sort of rebirth of Hellebuck that sort of provided the foundation for his breakthrough. That's become specialized. So too has goalie training. It's funny. I always say that I can break down a goalie's game between the pipes, but I can't tell you what's going on between his ears. Yeah. And so when people ask me about mental strength, what do I know? You look for signposts along the way. Jacob Markstrom. I couldn't tell you whether he was mentally strong before this year. He's proven it this year. You looked at other indications. The year he got thrown into the World Cup, because Lundqvist couldn't play on short notice because of an illness, and he handled it so well.
Yeah.
He didn't abandon his game. He didn't change who he was based on the situation. To me, that's a signpost along the way that this might be a mentally strong goaltender.
Yeah.
In terms of cultivating mental strength, there are more avenues than ever before. I think we work with a guy named Pete Fry, the mindset guy. And, he right now is running daily sort of clinics, online webinars, kind of like this actually, but with 25 goalies from Pee-wee right up into pro. Guy Dylan Ferguson of the Vegas Golden Knights takes part in those daily affirmation sessions every single day. Carter Hart, again, to go back to Carter, obviously everybody knows the story. John Stevenson, who Braden Holtby that's the first guy that got credit after he won a cup. Their history working on things together. What a lot of people may not know is that when Carter missed time last year because of the injury, now he comes back from that time when he was actually, I would argue, better. And again, this year, comes off an injury and comes back better. One of the things, not everything, but one of the things he did was he went back to I can't work on the ice.
Yeah.
I can't work my lower body, so he did some upper body stuff. But for the most part, what can I work on? I can work on my mindset. I can work on my mental strength. He went back to doing concentration grids that he used to do with John when he was younger. So I think, not all these young goalies have access to the same things. Not all of them may want it. But I think increasingly that no stone unturned mindset is leading more and more of them to voices like that, to techniques like that, to outlets in order to, rather than just say, am I mentally strong? Here are some tools to develop mental strength and make sure that, hey, I'm mentally stronger tomorrow than I was today.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Kev, ever talk about something along the lines of the absence of technique? Although you can pick this out as well. For years, obviously, we've all been fascinated by Dominik Hasek in the years. If you look at, would his style of play work in the modern day NHL, in your opinion?
Ooh, God, but I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
You know what? That's a tough one, because I want to say that I read or saw Dom say recently that today's goaltenders are better than him, and I say that. I hesitate to say it because I don't have the ability to on the fly here go and source it. But I remember sort of reading or he's done some interviews during games with Sabres broadcast where it was along those lines, which I find hard to believe because Dom is the greatest of all time. Like, he's my GOAT. Statistically, when you measure, I just look at it like in his era, the difference between everyone else's save percentage and him, like he outperformed at levels that most didn't. There was a method to that madness, and that's why I think it would. And if it didn't, he would find a way to make it work. Now,
he was about percentages too, though. Like, in his own mind, he was about percent. He was playing percentages that he had made up in his mind of the best play to make on every goal, on every shot.
He just did it differently. And the easiest one that your listeners or your audience, your viewers, I don't even know how to say that in this format, that people will probably relate to the easiest is the barrel roll, right? Because we can all picture it. Mm-hmm. And I had the pleasure of getting to, at the end of a Red Wings practice, he was on the table getting his massage after, and he just basically walked me through it. And this was not random in any way, shape, or form. He couldn't remember the exact play, but he started it back in the Czech Republic, where he realized that if a player cutting to his right through his crease, with the puck on his stick, he realized that by dropping that blocker hand into a paddle down and pushing out, it would force that player to sort of try and pull around him. And as soon as the player has their hands extended, what happens? They can't raise the puck. Right? So now he's taken away time and space. He's eliminated their ability to raise the puck. Their next option is to continue walking through the crease, assuming he doesn't have any help defensively. So what does he do now? Now I got to take away the bottom of the net. They can't raise it. So I roll over and I get my other arm out. Now, if they still have time and space, maybe I should be cursing my defense by this point. But if they do, they might be able to actually pull it back in or regroup enough with their hands to raise it. So what did he do? He completed the roll by bringing the legs up. I don't want to demonstrate that here because A, I'd get hurt and people would realize I'm still in my pajamas. But B, he would get those legs up, so sort of vertically over top of this. And essentially what he said was, I was in an inverse butterfly. My arms were like my legs, and my legs became like my torso. I had taken away time and space by pressuring with the blocker. I'd taken away the bottom of the net by rolling over with that left arm. And now my legs followed and took away the top of the net in this sort of inverse butterfly. So I mean, I read somewhere that Dom played chess at a grandmaster level, and whether it was plays like that or talking to him about when he would come out and charge a guy on a breakaway, he didn't miss very often, guys. It was not a fluke. That exact moment when you look down at the puck, he had already spring-loaded and was on top of you before you realized what was happening.
Yeah.
He played hockey at a grandmaster chess level or played goal at a grandmaster chess level, and that's why I think it may not have looked the same as what we saw when he played, but he would have found a way to make it work.
That's awesome.
Kevin, just an observation, because being in Buffalo, I saw Hasek in his prime, and I can tell you this: a normal scoring chance or a ridiculous scoring chance, it almost looked like he was at ease making those saves. I would say 90% of the goals that were scored were either absolutely perfect shots or something that was off speed or flubbed. He could stop breakaways. He could stop normal scoring chances, even, a 2-on-1, but it was the oddball thing that always beat him. And that I think that's a testament to how good of a goaltender he was.
Well, yeah, and at any level, even right to beer league, we hate it when guys flip. There's nothing. You'll know this if you're a goalie. There's nothing worse than everything is set up top cheese. You see the hands, you see the blade. You know he's trying to roof it on you, and so you stay patient, and then he flubs it through your 5-hole. Nothing worse than that. And so the fact that Dom read the play at such a level, I'm not surprised to hear that it would be mostly whiffs and misses that would beat him, because that's the only thing you can anticipate is another guy screwing up.
No, I remember being around the Flyers at that time when they would face the Sabres a lot in the playoffs and have trouble with them, and they would sit there and they would talk about, what are we going to do? How are we going to beat this guy? And their MO was always, we have to do unconventional things because he's an unconventional goalie. Unconventional shots, unconventional opportunities, because he's going to because they knew, like, percentage wise, if you're taking a normal wrist shot, he knows how to beat that.
Yeah, their MO act was allowing goals that went through the outside of the net rather than the inside.
Yeah, there was one of those for sure.
Getting the Carl Dykhouse bouncing puck goal in overtime against the Sabres. It was like da-dum, 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 and it goes in. That's how he beat Hasek.
But the Flyers were talking about doing that. They were saying that's the only thing we can think of, is to just do everything that we normally wouldn't do,
Makes sense.
And that, it didn't win. It worked for them in one series and didn't work for them in a couple other series. So,
Makes sense.
No,
I was just going to say, with a lot of the prospect coverage I do talk to a lot of young goalies, and, probably the first goalie that I noticed that had great core strength was Mike Richter. And then it started to build from there. Now you look at guys like Mackenzie Blackwood and Spencer Knight, and their core strength is it's off the charts. What has changed in that, and what percentage do you give as importance to the position for having good core strength?
Core strength. First off, I'm not an exercise physiologist. Sure. So I always get careful here. Usually what I refer to is the conversations I have with goalie specific trainers who are exercise physiologists, like Maria Mountain, who works with Carter Hutton, has a really exceptional online program, and she's been a good supporter of ours at InGoal. And I know she's like the Swedes, for example, the Swedish Federation invited her over to speak at their symposium. So there's a level of trust in what she's doing there, and a track record as well. Adam Francilli with all the NHL goalies that I work with. And I think core strength is almost I hate to say this, but it's almost like a cliche, right? Like it's sort of it's word that I would use myself because I don't understand the specifics behind it. And I think that for these people, people like Marie and Adam, it goes well beyond that. It's about exercising muscles that put you in flexion. And then at the end of your sessions, taking you out of flexion because it's not necessarily great everyday posture. It's about neutral pelvis. This is why when we talked about training and, bench presses, bench presses, one of the things that both of them will tell you to varying degrees I've heard from Adam for years, and Maria as well, I've seen in recent weeks and years probably online, back squats.
I'll tell you one thing about bench pressing, Kev. When the Devils made their own combine, because there was no such thing as a combine, and the rookies came in, Craig Billington was asked to bench press 150 pounds. He told me he couldn't even move the bar. He was a pretty good goalie.
Yeah, it just has so little to do with the position. But frankly, up until recent years, things like that were still part of the testing. If I'm going to be honest, I know at least one team that it still is. So I'm not going to out them. But just what they ask their prospects to do. And I get it. Hey, you don't want guys showing up out of shape.
Right.
But we're talking about things like neutral pelvis. not having back squats, because what back squats do is, they sort of put your back, like you think of that, for lack of a better term, butt out. I demonstrate, but I'm not.
That's all right.
The bottom doesn't match the top. We don't want to see my PJs.
But none of us wear pants, Captain.
You think of that lower back sort of arched and the butt out during a back squat. That's the opposite of what we want as a goaltender. It cuts. It basically shuts down and cuts off the hips and the hip flexors, and exacerbates some of those problems. I've heard some of the issues with hip and actually impingement within the hip being linked to premature squats at a young age that can cause the ball in the ball and the ball in the socket to not be perfectly round because of too much. There's all kinds. But there's reasons for it when you work with these people. They work on basically building posture and building muscles that allow you to move in the most efficient way as a goaltender. Adam's on top of, when you talk about things like tracking and head trajectory, basically the concept that if my head goes, like you see it less, but we still see it right up to the NHL level. That puck goes to my left. I need to move to my left, but in order to move to my left, I load everything up to my right. It's counter rotation. So so how do we get rid of that as goalies? There are technical aspects to the way we move our head that will eliminate that counter rotation. But from starting in the gym with Adam Francilia, we have things that we can do to learn to fire the obliques in a certain way so that they create everything moving in that direction, rather than my lower body wanting to move there and my upper body having to twist the other way to load it. So that type of training down to that level of detail, I think, is what separates trainers like that. And that's the level we're at for goalies, or should be at for top end goalies. And like I said, it probably can be summed up as core strength, but at the best level, it's a lot more than that.
I wonder very much about the youth hockey and how much goaltending coaching is happening at youth hockey right now. Like when I was a kid, there was hardly any. I mean, there was like maybe one of the guys knew, one of the assistant coaches might have known a little bit about teaching how to play your angles. That was like it. That was it, right? But I'm sure there's way more now to the top end guys. But to like your everyday rink that has just like 25 different teams at different various ages. I know a couple of them that don't have specific goalie coaches on staff and stuff like that, which just blows my mind for the importance of the position. Well,
okay, so that's an interesting one, because I guess it's all going to depend on what area you're at. But I mean, obviously, I'm up here in Vancouver, and I mean, by the time you're 7 or 8, you're told you got to make a decision, which drives me nuts. Talk to Holtby, talk to a lot of these guys. They'll tell you one of the reasons they're so good now is they played out until they were 12 or 13. And that allowed them to learn how to read the game. Unfortunately, a lot of minor hockey organizations are like, oh, you made rep as a goalie, but you're not good enough to be rep as a player. So you got to sit on the bench every second game rather than going out and playing and learning these things at way too young an age. That's my personal pet peeve. Interestingly enough, there are some federations in Europe that don't allow that. So it all depends where you are. We have goalie coaches for 7 and 8 year olds here. Interestingly, though, as we've seen the shift at the NHL level to different countries to find different goaltenders, where's the hot spot right now? It's Russia. And when I talk to goalie coaches who are over there a fair bit, they say the amount of potential and untapped potential over there is off the charts. One of the big reasons is, and talking to guys like Alexander Georgiev, like he grew up sort of getting old school Russian teaching. Like when he went to goalie school, when he was younger, it was skate, 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 skate. He's like, I would skate for 2 hours and never touch a puck. I wanted to go home and cry the first time. Like it wasn't fun, right?
Yeah.
And yet, focus on those skills versus, 8, 9 years old, reverse the age. Really? Like, really? You can, I do believe, and I know there's a lot of coaches in North America, and I do not want to paint them all with the same brush, because there's a lot of great ones. But you can become too technical at too young an age, I think is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And that's happened around the world. And it's interesting to me. We had a Russian goalie coach on the InGoal Radio podcast last week, Oleg Romashko. He was here to work with Ian Clark. He brought some Russian kids over to work with the Canucks goalie coach, Ian Clark. And Semyon Varlamov was in town. So I was talking to both of them because Varley came in and did a speech to the kids. Yeah. And he grew up too in this era where, guys like Hudobin, I've had this conversation. His first goalie coach was 19, Evgeny Nabokov at 19. Yeah. Right nowadays, you got him at 7 or 8. So I think part of what you're seeing in Russia is these kids grow up with maybe some skills training, but it's not really too technical at too young an age. They learn how to read the game themselves. They learn how to build those anticipation skills themselves. And then they add the technique in later. For Georgiev, he went to Finland to go to a goalie school there. That's where his technical base came from after growing up with this old school teaching. But as more and more NHL teams go to Russia, as more and more young Russian hockey players want to be goalies because of Bobrovsky and all these guys, we're seeing more and more goalie schools. So will we see that advantage that currently exists disappear as more and more goalies actually get more and more technique in Russia at a younger age? And the goalie coach thought so. Hudobin thinks so. Everybody wants to be Bob. They all want to play like him. They don't learn how to play like themselves. So that's a problem around the world. I think, again, not blaming anyone. Be interesting to see if it becomes a problem for the Russians as well.
Listen, I think we're gonna let you go, but I think I think you're absolutely right. I mean, obviously, when you look at this situation, putting a kid into a goalie at 7 or 8 is a tough mental thing to do to a kid, because you're again separating him from his friends, you're separating him from his team. A lot of the time is, when the guys go to play, they're going to have fun, and it's an intense position to throw them into right away at that age, and to give them sudden stuff. But Kevin, it's so great having you. Thank you so much. Where can people find you online so they know how to look you up?
In Goal Magazine is ingoalmag.com, and personally on Twitter at Kevin is in goal, all one word. Guys, I really enjoyed this. I'm sorry I got to run a little early today, but thanks for having me on.
I'll have you back. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Okay, take care. Anytime.
Thanks.
Yep, that's Kevin Woodley from In Goal Magazine. Good. That was fun. That was fun.
Great.
He's so good.
It's interesting to hear, what's going on.
For the listeners too, I want to tell them Ian Clark has his own goalie academy out in Vancouver. He's had it for a while. He's actually one of the early adopters for a lot of these things in that academy. So he's highly thought of.
Yeah, I could talk to that guy forever. I mean, as a goalie, I've just studied that position my whole life, and it's just been my thing. So that's really, really, really fun. Thanks, Russ.
I mean, he told me things again. I asked about core strength, and he's telling me about pelvis stuff that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, and it
makes me smarter.
And when you talk to guys like Carter Hart's a really good example of when you talk to somebody who's young as Carter Hart is, but as mentally strong as he is, it's pretty insane. Like, it really blows your mind. Like this.
You had to start early with him. He was so. I mean, he was talking about it as when we met him at obviously Russ met him at Combine, and then obviously
actually before then the World Juniors.
Right, at World Juniors, and it was just, you knew he was mentally wired differently, just way more mature than you would expect a kid to be.
I mean, I think about my daughter's dating somebody that's roughly his age, and I can't even imagine that they're the same species. I mean, nothing against the guy my daughter's dating, but when I talk to Carter Hart versus talking to
that's typical dad talk, though, right there.
But I'm just saying, I'm around a lot of, my daughter's a senior in high school, so I'm around a lot of people around 17, 18, 19 years old, whatever. I know Carter's a little older than that now, but it's like, but when I met him, he was younger, and I can't even possibly put that into perspective that, and what people don't know about Carter is he's no one does more charity work than Carter Hart on the Flyers. It's insane. Like the amount of stuff he does behind the scenes for his age is incredible. I mean, if they should freaking give him number 31 already, that's the one thing that pisses me off. So I'm just going to throw that out every time I talk about Carter.
They're not going to do it.
I think he's settled into 79 at this point now.
I don't think so. I've talked to him.
Tell you this. So he doesn't want the number. He doesn't want
to make a big deal of it. But I'm telling you, I don't think so. I
can tell you he doesn't want the number. I know that for a fact.
Anyway, we'll have to have him on here.
Let's do our pre-show because we had.
Before we do pre-show, let's can we jump?
Do whatever. I could do it at the end.
Let's do a post-show today. That'd be kind of cool. On a mode here of goalies, and I want to talk about the goalies because I think that today I put a blog up about the best goalies of the last 5 decades, like picking one at a time.
Yeah, okay. and I disagree, of course, with some of them.
I'm sure you do, and that's fine. It's natural that you should. I really think that. And then my top goalie of all time, which I know people will disagree with, but I think my top goalie of not all time of the last 50 years. Okay, so let's start in the 70s. And the 70s that was Ken Dryden's.
I can't believe I'm arguing this point with you, Ak, because you're picking Dryden, who played in front of arguably the best trio of defensemen in history.
But it doesn't matter. He was still great, Mike.
No, he was good. He was not great.
No. You didn't see enough of him.
Yeah, look at the 72. Look at the 72 Summit Series and tell me that he was great.
He was great. I mean,
he was not. I mean,
I'll tell you why he was great. You want to know why he was great? Because there weren't that many big goalies back then. If there were big goalies like him, they had tremendous 5 holes, and he didn't have that.
Yeah, he was so crazy young in 72 also, Mike. I mean, that's like for what he was on.
I know, and everybody looks at the 4 Stanley Cups and they just think, I'm sorry, I can't believe I'm arguing the fact that I think Bernie Parent was a better goalie in the 70s than Ken Dryden.
Well, I think Bernie Parent, almost any other decade would have taken it for me, but this decade, I mean, 5 Vezinas for Dryden. I mean, that's just insane.
It's like Gold Gloves in baseball. I'm right.
5 Stanley Cup. I don't know. Just like to me,
I'm going to give you. Here's Ken Dryden's record at Cornell: 76, 4, and 1.
Yeah. Let's put that in perspective.
That's a team number.
That's a team number right there.
They had 8 losses the one year.
He didn't have Savard playing in front of him or in defense or anything like that. He had no Mantha. It was just flat out.
Come on, Mike.
What was his save percentage? Damn it.
I mean, I am
wrong.
What was the XG?
I will say that Bernie Parent was more.
It's not like I'm saying Jerry Desjardins is the best goalie of the 70s.
I will argue that Bernie Parent was more valuable to the Flyers for those 2 Stanley Cups than Dryden was for his Stanley Cups. No questions asked. I would agree with that comment.
That's fine.
Without Bernie Parent, the Flyers don't have a prayer in those Stanley Cups. But the other reason the Flyers won those Stanley Cups is they never had to face the Canadiens in the playoffs on either one of those 2 runs. They got lucky. They got lucky that the Canadiens were knocked out, and then when they did eventually face the Canadiens in '76, they were.
So you could also potentially say 2 deep runs for that team, and it's possible. When you got to that final, they might have been out again. We just don't know. It's always going to be.
By the time they got to the '76 final, they and Wayne Stevenson was their goalie, if you remember at that point. Like Barant was hurt and stuff like that. They were. That was a tough final for them to take. Canadiens.
So it would have been a great series. I think it would have been a better series with Bernie in that. Obviously.
Yeah, no, there's no 2 ways about it. Without Parent, they don't beat Boston in the first Stanley Cup, and they probably don't beat Buffalo. I mean, it's like they. So yeah, Bernie, but still, that to me.
Well, now you want to name? You have others from the '70s or no?
Give me others that you like, but those are my 2.
I'll give you 2 more. I'll give you 2 more. Yeah. One that didn't have much in front of him for most of the time was Tony Esposito, and Tony Esposito was tremendous.
Yeah.
He was tremendous, and Eddie Giacomin was tremendous too.
Jerry Cheevers.
Cheevers was great.
Cheevers was great, yeah.
And Rogie Vachon in L.A.
Rogie Vachon was
a goaltender who had nothing in front of him.
How about Gilles Gilbert was another one too that I thought about, but
Yeah,
but he's next tier. I think he's next tier.
He's next tier probably for that. No, there was the 70s was a good era for goalies. That was a good decade.
But they didn't move like they do now. They were all stand-up goalies, so it's completely different.
Very different, yeah.
Down or if they were down stack pads, that was pretty much it. If they were down at all, it was pad stack, and that was pretty much it.
And there were very few acrobatic goaltenders. That's why one of the more I obviously because of the Leafs, one of the most popular goalies in the 70s because he was acrobatic was Paul Matier.
Right.
I'm not saying he was in that realm of being the best.
Yeah.
But he was
like mask, man. I Paul Matier's mask when I was a kid. That was awesome.
That was.
But it was more his acrobatics. And I think Russ and I saw his last acrobatic save at the Centennial Classic when he
got hurt.
When he hurt himself making a save.
And we saw him in the locker room limping. It was bad.
Oh yeah, no question. So then we jump to the 80s. My 80s goalie is definitely going to be controversial, but it's Billy Smith. Billy Smith was my goalie of the 80s, and people don't give Billy Smith enough credit for those Stanley Cup teams that the Islanders had.
I would say it's Grant Fuhrer over Billy Smith, though. I would, and I'll tell you why. Billy Smith. Part of it was psyching players out and clearing the crease with his stick and being physical and hitting them.
Yeah.
He was a good goalie, but he wasn't as good technically as Grant Fuhrer. He really wasn't. Now, Fuhrer gave up a lot of goals because if you think about it, the Oilers didn't have rock-solid defense.
No, that would be my point with regards to Fuhrer was the fact that, he held things down as well as he did, considering that team was always up the ice.
Yeah, they were always up the ice.
Yeah, no, Fuhrer was they gave up odd-man breaks a lot, and that left Fuhrer out to dry a lot of times. So having the numbers that he did, that's the reason why anybody's like, oh, well, Fuhrer had all these Hall of Famers. Yeah, but anybody watched the Oilers knew defensively they had a couple guys who could stay back. The rest of the guys were all go, go, go.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Mike, who do you have for the 80s?
For the 80s, I would make I would agree with Billy Smith to an extent, but I think his dominance ended around 85. So the second half of the decade, you could make. I mean, first half of the decade is Billy Smith. Second half of the decade is probably Patrick Waugh.
No, it's Patrick Waugh, and it's Patrick, and it's also Patrick Waugh.
But I think we go Waugh more into the 90s at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Waugh is very much like I wrote in my blog. Like if you went 85 to 95, then you're that's like, that decade would be Patrick Waugh's decade.
Yeah, and I can't make a case for Grant Fuhr because even though he won cups, his statistics, now it was a
problem. Look what he did in St. Louis.
Right, but that was in the 90s. We're talking about the 80s.
I know, but I'm just all right, fine. But I'm just saying down the road when he still was an older guy.
I'm not saying he was a great goalie, Ross. I'm just saying I'm talking about in the 80s. He probably he won as many cups or maybe one less than Billy Smith, but his statistics were reflective of the fact that Edmonton played no defense whatsoever during the regular season, and it's the whole point of he was the guy who didn't let that one goal in at the opportune time. Yeah, but his goals against were in the threes. So
but Al Arbour's system was defensively oriented.
It was completely defensively oriented, but I don't think you can. I hate when people hold that against goalies because
me too.
It's partially defensively oriented because of the goalie you have. Like there's some goalies that don't play well in that system.
Yeah, I hate when people hold that against Frederik Andersen for playing against a bad defense.
No, Frederik Andersen plays on a non-defensive oriented team.
No, but I mean, but certain people on this webcast criticize Frederik Andersen for not being good, and when he plays for a team that has no defense in front of him, he has no defense.
He's no Patrick. He's no Patrick Fuhr. Grant Fuhr. No Grant Fuhr. Grant Fuhr had no defense in front of him. And
I think we'll all agree.
Great times. That's the difference.
I think we'll all agree the 80s wasn't a great goaltending era anyhow.
It wasn't as good as the 70s, but the 90s is really interesting.
The 90s is
tremendous.
The 90s for me is Dom Hasek. That's Dom Hasek's.
I think it's a tie between him and Waugh. I do.
Yeah.
I can't say one's better than the other.
Waugh won with Montreal in 93. He won with Colorado in 96.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and I mean,
right at the end, and then 2000, right? We're going to start.
Like if he bopped his head 4 or 5 times a period, you knew you weren't getting a goal. Like he had that head bop, man. It was crazy.
He was in.
You can say Hasek didn't win any in the 90s, but he really didn't have a team in front of him.
I hold that against him. He was
his numbers were just so above and beyond anybody. Like that's why I asked Kevin about it because it was in an era of uber technique. Yeah. How Dominic Hasek would play in this era. I mean, nobody would even try.
I mean, he would be swimming out in the ocean in front of the creek. I mean,
Anthony is Tim Thomas. Like, that's the closest we've seen in this era.
Yeah, that would probably be the closest. But even he had sort of – it wasn't like –
he had a quasi-technique.
Yeah, whereas Dom, it was just like –
It was unbelievable. When Kevin talked about that quote, I tried to look up the quote, right? I couldn't find it, but I did find an article, and I didn't realize this, that Mitch Korn was his goalie coach in Buffalo. And Korn said that Hasek, when he was there, never even closed his glove playing as a goalie. He had to teach him that. He didn't do that. So that's why his rebound control was just ridiculous.
He was a second blocker instead of
he covered up the puck more with his blocker hand after he dropped his stick than he did his glove.
Yeah, Korn had to teach him how to do that.
I'm just laughing because I'm thinking about somebody posted this morning. What was it? Bull Durham, Nuke Lelouch when he hits the when he hits the bowl.
Yeah,
just the mind games that were involved. I kind of think of Hasek the same way in terms of the mind games that he would play on shooters. Like, I don't know what he's gonna, like Kevin Costner said. I don't know what he's going to do next.
Waugh was the first guy I remember saying, "Hey, he's a butterfly goalie and he's really good at it."
It's so funny because I actually was at the Hasek. Was the same, went into the Hall of Fame. Was it the same year that Kevin Allen did, I think, right? I'm thinking right. I remember getting on like a call and with Hasek, and somebody asked him about that exact thing, Mike, about the closing the glove thing. And he said, his reasoning for that was that the glove was bigger when it was open. So this was like another percentage thing for him. Like he's like,
right. It's more to block the net than
it was like a second blocker.
Yeah, people only saw it like as big. If he could have worn 2 blockers, he probably would have worn 2 blockers, to be honest.
Dan Blackburn's the only one to do that.
Right. Okay, so all right,
He had to. I just want people to know he had to.
you had to, right? Yeah. The 2000s. For me, this is Marty Berdore's era.
Yeah, it's Brodeurs.
Yeah.
This is and
Mike
Berdore.
can make a face all he wants, but he's the best.
I made a face of acknowledgement. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right, this is Berdore's era. There's no two ways about it. I mean, that was Berdore's era.
Yeah.
There really were no other goalies. And then the interesting thing about 2010s is
No, don't say there weren't any other
there
goals.
were goalies, but none at Marty's level. Like none.
I mean, Lundqvist is making a pretty good run at his wins. He's not going to get there, but he's making a pretty good run at it.
I'd say, but I think we look at Lundqvist certainly for the 2010 and more in the 2010s.
We got drafted in 2000. He was there towards the end, sure.
Right, but he's about as close. I mean, if we talk about the 2010s, it's him, Quick.
Yep.
No, my guy here. Got my guy yet. There were 9 different Vezina winners in the 2010s. So when you look back beyond that, there were always like people winning multiple years in the Vezina. Bobrovsky's the only one who won it twice.
Yeah.
In that decade, but he won it several years apart.
But who was the Montreal goalie that had the clean sweep? He had the Vezina.
Jose Theodore. He was a good goalie.
To me, the 2010s are defined by Marc-Andre Fleury. And I think he's the goalie of that decade.
Yeah, but in the middle of that decade,
No, but Lundqvist was better before Fleury was even there.
Yeah, in the middle of that decade, he got out goaltended by Ilya Brizgalov.
He
did. But when
I'm just saying, I admit
who is the last Flyers goalie?
I said the other day to someone, this was the greatest excuse to play 6-on-6 hockey. Was that instead with no goalies?
Awesome.
Was that Penguins Flyers series because Fleury was a train wreck and Brizgal was not that far behind.
No, but he's the last Flyers goalie to win a playoff series.
Yeah,
he was a train wreck, but at the same time, that's not true.
That is true.
That's true. That can
You're
talking about there. That's 2000.
Winning a series, yeah.
Winning a series. He is the last Flyers goalie to win a series.
That Penguins Flyers playoff series. What year was that?
2012.
It was
2012. Yeah, that's about right.
I mixed
They've been to the playoffs, but they haven't won a playoff.
Yeah, you're right. You guys are right. Yeah.
I know it doesn't sound right, but it's right.
Fleury wins it with the Penguins, very much so. He definitely, when he won it, he was the reason they won it in a lot of ways. He was incredible in
Game 7 against Detroit. In Detroit, that's a tough spot for
amazing.
And Crosby's injured in that game.
Right.
You have to give him his kudos. He was amazing in that game 7.
That might have been the best performance I ever saw in person for a goalie.
I think the best year of the last decade, the best goaltending year of the last decade is 2011 and Tim Thomas.
It's Tim Thomas without.
I would concur with that. Although I would say you do have to keep the runs of Quick in mind with LA. His runs were really strong. He psyched out other teams. I think he had a bit of a Billy whiff of Billy Smith about him too because of his
he had a little of Hasek in him in the sense that he's so unorthodox that he was so acrobatic and so weird in terms of his style that it threw teams off.
And if you're one year,
I have one game to play of any goalie in this decade. I'm going with Jonathan Quick for sure. At his best, at his best, I think in the one game, Jonathan Quick's the guy I want in net.
No, I'll go with Lundqvist on that. But I was going to say, if you're going with the 1 year thing, don't forget about my buddy Marty Turco, who almost set the save percentage record 1 year.
Yeah, but here's my thing.
Close.
Here's my thing. Okay, let me finish my.
I know him very well.
Let me finish my argument for Marc-Andre Fleury, and then you guys can tear it down. Because here's my thing. Okay. He wins it with the Penguins. The next year when he does, next year, obviously, he loses the goalie spot in the playoffs. But without him, Penguins don't get to the playoffs again. And people forget that he had an unbelievable year this year. But he loses the playoff spot. Then he goes and does perhaps the most remarkable goaltending season ever, the first year with the Vegas Golden Knights for Marc-Andre Fleury, which was just an absolute craziness that team was where it was. Had everything to do with Marc-Andre Fleury.
Sure, but I won't say it's the best ever because you can go back to years
as an expansion team behind Marc-Andre Fleury. And It's not just the fact that Marc-Andre Fleury was a good goalie. It's the fact that he was so good that team could play the way they played, and Gallant could play the style they played because Marc-Andre Fleury was their goalie, and only because Marc-Andre Fleury was their goalie. And Vegas team is still struggling to find another goalie that they can do that with, another backup that they can do.
That's true, but Gallant's system did help Fleury a lot.
But it was built off of Fleury. It was built. I think maybe it's a chicken or egg thing there, but I think honestly, it's Fleury's ability to make big saves. It's what Fleury learned in the series, like the series against the Flyers.
Fleury didn't get better after he left Pittsburgh, but he was better under Gallant's system. That's what I believe.
Oh, I think
but he did regain his form in the playoffs when Matt Murray went down last year. I mean, they wouldn't have won the cup if Fleury hadn't taken the ball and run with it those first two series before Murray got back.
Exactly, and I just think that the history will remember the Vegas Golden Knights first year run through the eyes of Marc-Andre Fleury. That's how they remember it. That's what will show, because as we've seen, as Marc-Andre Fleury has struggled or been hurt or whatever, the Vegas Golden Knights become way more regular.
But remember, he won that cup. He made that save on Nicholas Lidstrom. That was 2009, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then the beginning of the decade with the Penguins, remember that the beginning of the decade was them falling short all the time because they had too much money allocated toward Crosby and Malkin, and only in the latter half of the decade, when they got Kessel and they were able to create some cap space and get some secondary players, did they win their cups. And the first one was Fleury was the backup. So I don't know if you can give him goaltender of the decade based on 1 year with Pittsburgh and 1 year with Vegas. I would have to make a case for what Russ was talking about. Lundqvist, almost single-handedly got the Rangers to a Stanley Cup final.
He did. Like I said yesterday, Mike Lang said he had never seen a goalie in the playoffs walk into Pittsburgh and beat them in a Game 7 situation like that. He had never seen that. He said that was like the best performance he had seen from an opposing team like that in that building.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Lundqvist was,
and that was the height of his game. I'm going to give you though. It's easy to mention Fleury, right? But with Brodeur, you could mention 2 or 3 years. But even at the age, obviously he had 48 wins 1 year and 12 shutouts. But then Mike will be like, well, his defense was great. Okay, but in 2009, in 2009, 2010, at the age of 37, he still had 45 wins with a 2.24 and 9 shutouts. That's again
still crazy, and the Devils weren't as good then. The Devils weren't as good then as they were.
No, weren't even
at all. And that Stanley Cup run the Devils had, where they faced the Kings, that was Brodeur. I mean, that was
it was all Brodeur. So I'd like to give it to Fleury, but I think one of these years is Brodeur, not Fleury. I know he was on an expansion team, but Brodeur was ridiculous. And I look, me as a Ranger fan, early on, I would have said, look at the team in front of him, but he kept doing it all through the age of 37.
He did. He never, and even when their defense play changed.
I mean, Colin White may have been their best defenseman in that Stanley Cup.
And what was amazing, you're right. And what was amazing to me is as he got older, you got to see him make more saves, and I got a bigger appreciation. In the beginning, I was
he faced a lot more shots.
Yeah, as a kid, I'm kind of with you, Russ. I was very much he just has a great defense in front of him. But the other thing about Brodeur that made him so crazy good was that he perfected handling the puck, which Hextall had started with. Yeah. Brodeur perfected it. Yeah. And to have that defense, have his ability to make saves, and have his ability to clear the puck on his own as well. Yeah. That's another factor that you have to take into Marty Brodeur.
I mean, they changed the league because of it.
Ed Snyder, when they came back from the lockout, forced the trapezoid on just so they could try to beat the New Jersey Devils. That's flat out the story that I've been told, and I'll believe it forever.
It's true. It's definitely true.
So, I mean, when you look at that, that's how it played out. That is why I put Marty.
And he still was able to clear the puck, even in a limited streak.
If you're Marty Brodeur, can you imagine how frustrating that must have been to come back from the lockout and have that restriction put on you for no reason? It made no sense, because if a goalie comes out of the net further than that, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous play for the goalie to make. You as a team, you should want a goalie to come out further than that to handle the puck, because it's a dangerous play for them to make. So it's only specifically made because Marty Brodeur could do that without having a problem. So it's completely ridiculous. And then, so that's why, to me, the best goalie of the last 50 years is Marty Brodeur.
But now, who's the next one?
But the last 50 years.
No, I know. But now, if we know who you got for that, and we pretty much agree.
You guys agree? You agree, Russ?
Yeah.
of the
All
last
right,
50
Brodeur
years,
for the last 50 years, I would agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
was the
I
second.
agree with that one. So I'm proud of
And
myself.
who is the next?
Man, but Hasek's there's enough of an argument there for Hasek.
There's always an argument for Hasek.
Yeah.
There is.
But I would probably go Watu with a real close 2A-ish for Hasek.
I agree. That's how I would go.
Yeah.
It's interesting because Waz doesn't get any decade because of the time frame switching over from
Going late 80s
Yeah,
into
but
the
his,
90s.
his
and
cup
2000s,
wins span 14. His cup wins span 14 years.
Which is incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he wins his first as a rookie in '86, and then
Right.
he wins in 2000. And, right, so I mean, 14 years. That's
He
incredible.
was so young, though, starting too. So that was the one thing he had as an advantage
21,
there.
I think.
21, I think.
Was
Yeah.
he 21? Yeah, he was 21. So, I mean, 34, 35 years old winning his last, is that correct? I'm trying to think. I thought he was younger than 20. Was he young? I thought he was
No,
younger.
I'll check.
Mm.
I'll check.
his first time he was very, very young.
He was very young.
He was a rookie that wasn't supposed to play, but somebody got hurt.
Yeah, because Hayward got hurt.
Yeah, that's how it started.
Hayward got hurt.
Right. That's how it started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, watching Patrick Waugh, he was absolutely crazy good.
Yeah.
I think Hasek's my number 2 though, just because
He was born in October of '65, so he was 21.
21.
Okay, so that's about right. Yeah, so he would have been 34, turning 35 when he
He
won.
started the season at 20, but in the playoffs he was 21.
He's a Libra like me, but clearly he's crazier.
Yeah.
Which is tough.
Freddie Waugh is crazier than Patrick. So let's not even go there.
Yeah. That's not.
But who's the next great one? That's what we should go around with. Like, who is the next one that we're going to talk about and say, you know what?
Right.
That's the guy.
I'm going with your rookie guy in New York, Russ. I think he's.
You go with
Let's cool our jets here.
No, I'm telling you right now. I just from watching goalies all my life, and I focus in on him, seeing him play a few. I mean, Elvis is really interesting too. Elvis is actually a little bit Hasek-y, but that kid Shesterkin is just he's got it. He's got it. Whatever it is, he's got it.
We're in store for it with health and everything.
Yeah.
The Philadelphia and New York rivalry.
Oh my God, it's going to be great.
It's going to be between the two of them. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Hopefully over the next decade.
I am not going to go with Shesterkin. I'm actually going to go with Connor Hellebuck. I look at him. He has led the league in different things for different years. This year, he was probably the most challenged he was ever going to be, especially defensively. And he was tremendous. He had 31 wins, and he had also made the most. He had faced the most shots, made the most saves. I mean, think about that. 6 shutouts. Like, he's already got 148 wins after 5 years. He is on pace right now to be the same as like Belfour, Luongo, Jonas Hiller, who we talked about a few weeks ago, Cam Ward, those kinds of guys, Nabokov. He's in that realm right now for his first 5 years.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm not, Hellebuck to me is he's all kind of his inconsistency kind of makes me a little crazy. Like he's crazy good right now, but he has moments where he just is so inconsistent. He's
in games, but not seasons. Like if you think about it,
yeah.
26. We saw. I mean, if we're focusing on the game he had in Philadelphia, that you can make that point because he was definitely not.
Sure,
he was off, but goalies are going to have it.
I mean, a lot of Winnipeg's struggles this year just mirrored what Hellebuck was doing at the time. Like Hellebuck would either be very good or very bad, and when he was very good, Winnipeg would go on this incredible run, and when they was bad, Winnipeg would just not be able to do anything. He's usually important to that team, obviously.
Just to give you an example, he's already, had 2 years where he's like 22 or 23 or higher for GSAA, which is crazy good.
No, it is amazing. But goalies like him, they kind of remind me of like the Steve Mason type goalies that are like really.
Oh, he's better than Mason. No offense to Mason.
He's better than Mason. He's better than Mason. But goalies like with that particular style have like don't necessarily have the same thing that some of these other goalies have. They have like really good for a while, and then people do figure out something on them.
We're overlooking the goaltender who in the last 4 years has won 2 Stanley Cups.
That's fine to name him.
Matt Murray.
So if that's is that your guy?
I mean, in terms of looking for going forward,
Murray's been good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, those playoffs, he's been good. He has.
We all agree Murray's really good. We just don't think he is the great one.
He's sort of like a miniaturized, almost Grant Fuhr situation in that there's so many stars that's sort of on that.
I think it's more Osgood. I think he's getting an Osgood tag.
I think he gets. I think he gets killed because
I think he's better. I think he's better than Osgood.
Yeah, he's better than Osbad. But this is the thing. It's like you've got one, and it's strange that you've got one goaltender who's from Pittsburgh and another goaltender who plays for Pittsburgh. One in the Western Conference, one in the Eastern Conference, who I think deserve accolades, and that's Gibson and that's Murray. I think both of them don't get as much because they get hurt all the time.
Yeah, it definitely takes away from him. It hurts Gibson for sure. But
definitely affect you.
But Ant, you get to name yours, and Mike, you still have to name yours.
In terms of my
the next great one.
Next great one.
And he could be playing already, or he could even be not playing yet.
I mean, with health and everything, and it may sound a bit like because I just I mentioned him earlier in terms of the duel. I think it's going to be between Hart and Shesterkin. I really do, and they're both incredibly talented, and I like the way both teams are kind of set up in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Philly maybe a bit more, maybe a little bit more advanced at the moment with the way they're set up. I think defensively and at forward, but not by a ton.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna slightly go Hart over Shesterkin, but I'm talking like by a razor thin margin. Barring and health is going to be critical, I think, for both guys in order to determine that.
I mean, I would have to say that both of them are ahead of the guy. I'm going to go off the board a little bit because it would be boring for me to say Hart or Shesterkin. I really think that Cal Peterson in LA could be a great goaltender for the next decade.
Yeah, I can tell you, I felt that covering him in college. Like I covered him in one of the playoff runs, and on Notre Dame, they weren't a great team. They had Anders Bork, and they had Peterson, and they had Andrew Peak, and they didn't have much else.
Right.
They had a few other guys that were pretty good. Peterson was a big reason.
And that's something that the Sabres organization is going to have to. Let's just say they're crossing their fingers and toes over the next 2 years that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen will develop in Rochester.
Phenomenal name. I just love the name.
Yeah, it's great name.
Oh, God, you can hear the announcer making it.
Old Ukko-Pekka Seppo.
The big name that we're leaving out is Vasilevsky.
Yeah, that's a big name. I was going to bring that up too.
I left him out because I think he's playing too much, and I think I've seen a little bit of a decline in his play because they're playing him too many games. He was already at 52 games this year, which is enough for a season. He was at 65 a couple of years ago. They're playing the hell out of that kid.
I would put him at number 2 behind Shesterkin, and I would put Hart at number 3 right now.
Flamester has.
So you wouldn't even have Hellebuck in the top 3. You're crazy, man.
Flamester has Binnington.
I think Binnington, with one more great year, could prove it to us. Like after this year, because he's already having a good year. I don't think he's there yet.
Now, the guy who will have an opportunity, but I don't know whether he'll be as good, and Timothy Park in the chat said it, is Samsonov. Because
we haven't seen enough of him in the NHL yet.
Right. And that's you can say he could be the next great one, but I need to see a year of proof.
Yeah.
To really
with goalies, I like to see more than that, because otherwise we would have said that about Mason, right? So
yeah, I mean, and then Elvis is in there too.
He's a really good goalie. I'm just using him as an example.
Yeah, I mean, Elvis is in the discussion too for me, but
he's not in there yet. He's not even close.
No, but we're talking about future. We're talking about like the next.
I know.
10 years from now, like if we start a decade of the 2000s, So like to me, I mean, what Carter Hart has to learn to me is the concept of when to go down and when not to go down a little bit from the NHL level. Like there's sometimes in the NHL level, I feel like he is down too early, which is a typical like younger goalie thing. His reflexes are so good that he makes up for it at times, but he does. And then the way he plays on the post as well, where he's down on the post really low when they wrap around, and some teams are starting to figure out to shoot high, like short side right away.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff. Every goalie has to correct little things.
I think his biggest thing, if you ask me the one thing, and I've seen a million Hart games too, he's still very skittish with his stick play, and that has to get better.
Yeah, that's the one. I would agree with Russ there. That's the one thing that's in his game that's still a shortcoming. Handling ability.
Not much shortcomings, by the way.
There really isn't. It's the main one at this point.
Even the stuff I'm saying, like that going down or not going down thing is like the one thing the young goalies all like have to figure out. Like it's like, and Shesterkin probably will do it more as well. I just haven't seen him play as many times, as I've seen.
I'll tell you what I've seen out of Shesterkin that I think is different than all the goalies that we've talked about is we always talk about goalies seeing the puck in traffic, which is an oxymoron because you can't see the puck in traffic because there's traffic. But he seems to know where the puck is going to go when there's traffic. Yeah. And there's not been that many goalies that can figure that out regularly. That's the hardest thing to do, I think.
No, it is. It's feeling where the puck's going to go.
Right.
It's because you're not going to see it. There's too many guys trying to block shots in front of you and stuff like that. But it's feeling what the possibilities are. And the other thing I've been really impressed with him that I haven't seen with many goalies of this generation at all is he can poke check. He's like he has the ability.
Oh, no, his stick is great. He's got
a great poke check, and I've seen him use it at times when NHLers don't know what to do with it because there hasn't been a poke checking goalie in the NHL for like 20 years. So these guys don't know what the heck to do with it. Like he'll skate through the crease. Someone will skate through the crease like 4 feet out, and they think they're safe.
In his first start at Madison Square Garden, he made a headman pass to set up a scoring chance, and that was just like, wow, you got guts, man.
He's got that star quality to him, that for sure. That he's obviously got a lot of cocky and confidence.
But I'm telling you, Hellebuck's boring but great. That's the problem with him. He's boring.
Funky Cold Zadina says David Ayers.
I agree with that because it bothers Mike.
No, well, I am for everybody at the NHL Network being fired and laid off because I believe they played the David Ayers game last night on NHL Network.
Oh, they did? Really? Oh, man.
Yes.
It warms the cockles of everybody's heart except Mike's cold-blooded.
It was the most interesting and most fun night.
It was this year. Like honestly, if there's nothing left of this hockey season,
that would be the moment of the season.
It is going to be the moment of the season.
There's no two ways about it. I mean, it was that crazy. The scenario was so weird. Now,
if he'd have done that in Columbus, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal.
No, the guy was the guy.
It happened in Toronto.
The guy with the Marlies, a Marlies Zamboni driver has is a huge Leafs fan playing in a game that's enormously important to the Maple Leafs against the Maple Leafs. To root for the Maple Leafs to win, and now he's the goalie on the other team. That's the thing that's just like that.
Wearing blue pads and blue and white and blue mask.
I know he's a Leafs fan. Like, imagine throwing in to play against your favorite team.
If you wrote that as a movie script, Mike would be like, "This is stupid."
I know you're going to play against your favorite team. It's like it's nuts.
Nicholas McKinnon in the chat says, "Can Anthony confirm that Mike is a lizard?"
All right, so I'm going to do the post show now.
Yeah, so let that without the buzzer.
I gotta go.
We're out of there. So thanks guys for watching, and now we'll go on to the post game show.
We're doing the post show. So today should have been opening day, and it should have been like my 32nd opening day at Citi Field and Shea Stadium combined, and it's not, right? And I saw some good things and bad things. One bad thing I saw was the Mets actually put the opening day lineup on the field, CGI. They may have used MLB 20. Who knows what they used? And they put that picture out there, and I will not retweet that because it just makes me too sad to do it. The Phillies sent that email, which was confusing. Many people said the same thing I originally did.
But they also it's opening day at home, basically.
I know. It's confusing. It is confusing.
Yeah, if you don't read the email, sure, it would be.
So they did that. But I'm going to go through the worst opening day memory for me, but it's the most vivid not because of a win. It's nothing that happened on the field. It was 1981. We were leaving Shea Stadium. My best friend, who is a good friend of mine now, says, let's go visit my aunt. And I said, okay, where does she live? He goes, she lives over in Corona, Queens. And I said, is it a nice neighborhood? He said, yes. So we walked from Shea Stadium. We're walking. And probably like 6-7 minutes into the walk, I saw there was a shoe sign place. And I said to him, everybody's wearing sneakers in this place. I think we better walk faster. And not much further after that, we got mugged. Guys pulled knives on us. This has never happened to me since. They took our money, whatever jewelry we had. It wasn't that much. He probably lost the biggest thing. He had like a gold necklace, but they robbed us with knives. So then we got to his aunt's house. And of course we're like, we have no money to get back on the train. We have nothing. She gives us lunch and they have to drive us home because we had no way of getting home. So yes, 1981 Met game. I got mugged right out.
They stole Russ's gold-plated necklace with the Rangers emblem on it.
and just so I don't leave it out, while we were on that walk, we literally walked, I want to say, 100 feet out of Shea Stadium. If you know, when you're crossing over, it's not walk friendly. And so like there's a lot of areas over the highway. And I walked into an open manhole, like it's halfway open.
Oh my God.
And I did. And I slammed my knee.
Like Wile E. Coyote style?
Yes. And Aaron will tell you the story. He will tell you the story.
Did you walk under any large boulders?
No, but the funny thing is he'll tell you the story. He's talking to me, and then all of a sudden I was gone. And I fell down, and I smashed my knee in the concrete.
Wow.
That happened like 100 feet into the walk.
Oh my goodness.
You know,
So it was doomed from the start, man.
the only jury trial I ever served on actually was I got picked for jury duty, and it was the same exact thing with someone walking and falling down a manhole. That was the jury I was on.
I was that guy.
Can I just relate something to the current crisis? I'm the person who decided to delay my jury duty 6 months because obviously we were going through the hockey season.
Right.
And the date that I delayed it would have been the middle of March when everything got shut down because of the coronavirus. They would have just waived everybody, and I wouldn't have had jury duty. But I'm going to get jury duty in August because that's when everything is going to happen.
And the Leafs will be in the Stanley Cup. That's what'll happen.
All right, exactly.
That's fantastic.
Unbelievable.
That is really
my opening day memory would have been the only opening day I've ever attended was 1994, Phillies, Rockies, and that was when John Kruk had just come back shortly after his surgery.
That is, Anthony, ironically, that is the only opening game I ever
Really? You guys?
The only home opener I was ever at. They lost that one. I had to go check. I remember they lost it, and I saw it was 8-7 they lost.
It was a crazy high-scoring game.
It was a crazy high-scoring game. It was the one time we actually got tickets a little bit back on first base line. I remember it distinctly because that was the only time where it was senior year of high school for me. That's the only one I ever attended. And then the next game, they beat the Rockies like 12. It was a ridiculous 12-3 score. They lost 8. There was a lot of runs in that series.
Opening day because he didn't want to get stuck in
No,
traffic.
I was at opening. I was at an opening day 2 years ago, the 2018 season opener of the Yankees in Toronto against the Blue Jays. Giancarlo Stanton hit a home run in his first at bat and then has sucked ever since.
That's a Blue Jays opener. Just
it's
so
a
you know.
Blue Jays opener, but I mean, but I have to say, I did go to that game with a temporary cap on my tooth.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, and it broke in two when I bit into a chicken finger that was about as hard as the Hope Diamond.
Oh man,
I remember.
I had this post hanging
only
out of
happened
my
to you,
tooth.
Mike. Yeah.
Oh, only me. Only
He
me.
came back and did the show, and you still didn't have the post. I remember you kept your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Something's wrong. Welcome to Hockey Buzz.
That was rough. Oh my god, that's awesome. Wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, it is sad. I mean, I'm not a baseball fan, but I do like the opening day stuff.
Opening day is tremendous.
I mean, I once baseball season starts in my office, I have like a TV over there that's always on baseball all day long. It's just like, if there's afternoon baseball, I'll find it, whatever.
Yeah.
It's fun that there's a sport that's playing during the day when you work from home. It's just, it's on. No matter who's playing, I'll find the game that's on and I'll put it on. Yeah. I subscribe to the
now opening day might be June 1st or never.
Yeah, it's funny because I used
June 1, July 1, who knows this point.
I used to find a way to call in sick for opening day. And back in the day when the NFL draft was in the mornings, in the 80s, I would call in sick to school because the NFL draft was on. But I would call in sick for opening day. And,
I was living in Virginia, and we drove to New York to keep going to opening day. So that's how much we love opening day here.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
that's when Mets fans have their highest hope, and then it just drifts.
They're they're the winningest team ever on opening day. It's funny, but
it's all because Russ attends all the time.
There you go.
I have good friends that never miss an opening day, like in St. Louis, all over the country. So it's a big deal.
The one time you can be optimistic, and it's fun. It's when spring is supposed to start, right? Summer's coming around the corner.
Get summer.
We saw it in Philly how ridiculous last opening day was, and everything and literally it's like apex, and then after that it was
I know.
Slipped down real quick.
I know.
That was the Gabe slope.
I know. Well, it wasn't early. It's March. It was an early opening day.
Yeah, March 26th.
This would have been the early. This was supposed to be the earliest opening day in Phillies history.
Although the weather's not terrible, it's like 55 degrees.
It was in the game. The opener for the Phillies is in Miami, so it would have been.
Yeah, for the Mets, it would have been like in the 50s.
Oh wow, they're actually Phillies opening day. They had 2 series, and then they had Milwaukee. I think then their opening day to Milwaukee. So yeah.
Yeah, followed by 161 more games as in the chat. Right?
So
beautiful thing. Don't you dare say anything.
Listen, I watched the Ken Burns documentary on baseball. I'm sold. I got it.
Well, we can talk more baseball tomorrow with a Buffalo Bison's Hall of Famer,
right.
Pete Weber.
Yeah, tomorrow we have Pete Weber on the show, guys. It'll be fun, and we'll do the Predators all-time team, and maybe the Kings all-time team as well, because he was out there. He was out there in LA as well with them for a while.
Triple Crown line.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much, Anthony, for joining us. As always, you really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
It's great to have you, and and again, thanks to Mr. Woodley for joining us earlier today. Make sure you follow everybody on their Instagram on Twitter. There, Anthony is right there on the screen for you, and so is Russ, and so is Mike's. And I'm just at Eklund. Follow me there. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey, and that was just baseball. We'll talk to you tomorrow.